Carlos Sainz has made an exclamation mark in Baku, and one that has surprised not only his critics, but the entire paddock. Second starting position for Williams at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, only behind Max Verstappen, and this after a season that has been anything but consistent so far. Anyone who thought that Sainz would disappear into insignificance after leaving Ferrari now finds themselves confronted with a new reality. The Spaniard delivers, at least on Saturdays. His statement after qualifying was as clear as it was provocative. "I have always delivered when it comes to qualifying." And indeed, the numbers show that in the direct duel with teammate Alex Albon, he is absolutely on equal footing. 8-8 in the qualifying comparison, with a razor-thin advantage of 0.026 seconds. That may sound like little, but in a world where milliseconds can decide careers, it's a statement. It becomes even clearer when you consider that Albon already went out in Q1 in Baku and has to start from the very back. Before we dive deeper into the analysis, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and write in the comments whether you think Sainz can bring Williams to the podium. But back to the facts. Williams didn't just shine through luck in Azerbaijan. The strategy in qualifying was razor sharp. While other teams hesitated or reacted too late to the right tire choice, Williams was there. Always the right compound at the right time, always a clean rhythm on track. The result, Sainz suddenly found himself in a starting position that hadn't been experienced in Grove for years. Since George Russell sensationally finished second in Spa in 2021 on a wet track, Williams hadn't had a driver so far up front. And even then, it was a race full of chaos and rain that helped the team. This time was different. Baku, a street circuit with unpredictable conditions. Yes, but Sainz's performance was no whim of the weather. It was the result of perfect execution in qualifying. Of course, you can't ignore the elephant in the room. Max Verstappen. The Dutchman ultimately secured pole position, thus restoring the pecking order. But it was significant that only he was able to displace Sainz. All other favorites, whether McLaren, Ferrari, or Mercedes, had to line up behind the Williams driver. In a season that has so far been dominated almost exclusively by McLaren and Red Bull, this result feels like a needle prick to the establishment. Sainz himself seemed consciously intent after the session to directly target his critics. "Qualifying was never my problem," he emphasized. "Today we showed that the pace is there, in the car and in me." Between the lines, it was clear to hear whoever had prematurely written him off after weak races is wrong. And yet the question remains, is one strong Saturday enough to save a botched season? Williams, meanwhile, is basking in the moment of glory. For a team that had to fight for connection for years and was often ridiculed as backmarkers, the second starting position in Baku is a historic result. The last comparable performance dates back to 2017, when Lance Stroll started from second place in Monza. 8 years later, it's happening again. And this time it's Carlos Sainz who dominates the headlines. But the euphoria must not obscure the fact that the reality on Sunday could be completely different. Sainz himself knows this all too well. "The races and the points don't go as we want," he said soberly. And this is exactly where the crux lies. Qualifying victories are nice for the headlines, but they don't bring championship points. In the end, only what happens in the race counts. And there Williams has often had to lose ground this season. What cannot be denied about Sainz, however, is his determination. He spoke clearly about a goal: the podium. "I will give everything to give Williams the first podium. If it's possible, great. If not, then we'll see further." These words show a driver who faces the challenge, knowing that the chances are minimal, but also that the craziest things have happened in Baku. Carlos Sainz's second starting position in Baku is undoubtedly a respectable success, but it also raises uncomfortable questions. Can a single qualifying really obscure the fact that Williams still has major deficits in the race? Or are we witnessing one of those snapshots that in the end seem more like an outlier in the statistics? This is exactly where the challenge lies for Sainz and his team, to provide proof that this result is more than just a footnote. The analysis of the weekend shows how much Williams depended on the right timing. The red flags in Q3 caused by Oscar Piastri's accident and the changing track conditions played into the team's hands. While McLaren and Ferrari partially squandered their chances, Williams used the gap perfectly. That was undoubtedly clever, but it feeds the suspicion that second place was more the product of an optimal moment than lasting competitiveness. Sainz himself vehemently contradicts this reading. In his statements, he emphasizes that his qualifying performances are consistently strong, and it's only the race results that are lacking. But this is exactly where the sore point lies. A driver who has to publicly justify himself is often one whose position is already being questioned. That Sainz so offensively emphasizes his qualities in year one, after Ferrari shows how great the pressure has become. A look at the statistics makes the dilemma clear. 8 times he was able to beat Albon in qualifying, 8 times the tie was ahead. A duel on equal terms then. And that with a team that in the past often needed drivers who could grow beyond themselves to score points. So, if Sainz really wants to establish himself as a leading figure at Williams, it's not enough to be narrowly ahead in the direct comparison. He has to deliver results that go beyond qualifying. The podium in Baku, however unlikely it may seem, could therefore become the touchstone of his entire season. If he manages to convert this starting position into something countable, it would not only be a small sensation for Williams, but also a personal rehabilitation. However, if he fails again on Sunday, the narrative of the strong qualifier but weak racer will gain even more momentum. Williams' team management is aware of this tightrope walk. For years, attempts have been made to modernize structures and reduce the gap to the top teams. A driver like Sainz, with his experience at Ferrari, McLaren, and Renault, should actually be the one who accelerates this process. But so far, his time in Grove has been characterized more by frustration than progress. His success in Baku qualifying, therefore, gives cause not only for joy, but also for skepticism. Was that a signal of departure, or just a brief flash in an otherwise gray season? The psychological component is also particularly interesting. Sainz knows that his future in Formula One is not automatically secured. With young talents like Oliver Behrman, Isaac Hadjar, or Arvid Lindblad already waiting in the wings, the pressure on drivers of his age is enormous. A second place in qualifying brings headlines, but in the long run, only points, podiums, and consistency count. If he comes away empty-handed again this Sunday, the criticism will be relentless. For Williams, on the other hand, the situation is ambivalent. On one hand, the second starting position is proof that the team can step up at the right moment. On the other hand, it also makes the weaknesses in the race all the more visible if the result is not confirmed. The team's last podium dates from another era. Should Sainz manage to break this spell, it would not only be a personal triumph, but also a liberation for the entire team. And finally, Max Verstappen must not be forgotten in this discussion. The Dutchman starts from pole and is the clear favorite in Baku. Sainz knows that a victory is unrealistic, but that's exactly what makes his starting position so interesting. Nobody expects him to be able to beat Verstappen, but everyone expects him to defend second place, or at least secure a podium. This expectation is both opportunity and risk. If he succeeds in pulling off the feat, he will be celebrated as a hero. If he fails, the criticism will be merciless. In the end, there stands a driver who balances between hope and doubt. Carlos Sainz has pushed open the door to a new story with his performance in Baku qualifying. The question is only whether he can also walk through it.